Welcome to On the Ballot with Ballotpedia, where we connect people to politics by providing neutral, nonpartisan, and reliable information on our government, how it works, and where it's headed.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of On the Ballot. I'm your host, Norman Leahy. I'm a senior editor at Ballotpedia. And today, in this episode, we're going to do a deep dive on one of the big elections that's coming up on November 4th, this being the elections in New Jersey. The Garden State will be electing not only a new governor, there is no incumbent running this time, so it really will be a new governor, as well as its state house. And so in any race like this, where there are a lot of moving parts, it helps for us to talk about it from an on-the-ground perspective and a nuts and bolts perspective. Join us in the last half of this for our own Briana Ryan, who's going to talk to us about the mechanics of voting and that material. And then right now, we're going to talk to an expert, the guy on the ground, guy we talked to this summer about these elections, Brent Johnson with NJ.com. We discussed this before we went on air, but it's odd for an old man like me to talk about the word vibes. But I'm going to go there. So what's it feel like right now in this race?
Vibe is there. I mean, if you talk to insiders on both the Democratic and Republican parties, that it really could go either way. It's not just them talking about it in public, that they feel like it's a turnout game. It's kind of a jump ball. Although Mikie Sherrill, the Democratic candidate, is in the lead, a congresswoman from North Jersey. She leads by single digits in recent polls in the last week, show her up anywhere from 5 to 7. So that shows that she is in control, but that it's not far out of the margin of error. And the thought is that Jack Ciattarelli, the former state lawmaker who's the Republican nominee, that he really does have a shot here, depending on who shows up on Election Day. So it's really a race to watch.
And of course, as we have also discussed, all elections are turnout elections, but this one really might be that. And so if you had to judge which of these major party candidates has the best campaign operation to do a turnout election?
Well, one thing you keep hearing in recent days among Democrats, there's a lot of concern or private worry that they're not going to get the base to come out because they're not excited by Sherrill, and that the hope is that with Donald Trump in the White House, that inspires blue-leaning New Jersey to come out and vote for her as a protection against Trump.
Uh-huh.
But he seems to have enthusiasm. Even polling shows that he has an enthusiasm gap, and he leads among independents. And there's a thought that everyone's just more excited for him. Now, whether he can close the gap in a state where there are 800,000 more registered Democrats than Republicans is the question. Is that enough to put him over the top? So I guess we'll find out soon.
Well, and I guess when you use the word excited, what does it mean that his people are more excited? Are they showing up in droves at his events? Are the Sherrill people sitting on their hands and looking glum at one another? What does excited mean?
He gets a lot of people show up to his events, and they show up to her events too, but there seems to be a palpable crowd size for him, and people on social media chatting him up, for lack of a better term. But also the polls show this. There was a poll from Quinnipiac University last week that showed his voters are much more excited to vote for him than her voters are to vote for her. So it's also an analytical standpoint, the enthusiasm. But as they say, polls don't vote on Election Day, and the only poll that matters is what happens then. So, again, we'll see.
Yeah, it'd also be that yard signs don't vote either.
Yes,
but we'll see. But so, all right, that's the top lines. What are they talking about? What are the issues driving the race here in the late innings?
Well, everything hanging over anything these days with politics is Donald Trump. Ciattarelli's been endorsed by Trump, and he's a former Trump critic. He once called Trump a charlatan who wasn't fit for office. That was 10 years ago. This is his third time running for governor, Ciattarelli. He lost the primary in 2017, was the nominee in 2021, and nearly upset Governor Phil Murphy, losing by 3 points 4 years ago. And this is his third time running, his second time as the GOP nominee. And this time he has Trump support. Trump has been sending off social media posts in his benefit, and he's going to appear at some telephone rallies in the final weeks, although you probably won't see him in person because we are a blue-leaning state, and they don't want the risk of having Trump appear in person with him in the final days. And so Trump is big, and Sherrill is basically painting Ciattarelli as a Trump acolyte who is he's too dangerous to elect in these times, that she'll be a buffer against Trump and he won't be. So that you hear that a lot, but then also there's the economy. We are one of the costliest states in the country to live in. Our property taxes are the highest in the nation. Our energy bills are out of control. So you hear a lot of people saying, "Okay, we get it." And Sherrill is making the economic case that Trump has been bad for the economy too, and he is saying we've had 8 years of Democratic rule, time for a change. So the economy is always top of mind, as we learned in last year's presidential election. That was a big driving force of voters. So those are the big themes you hear as we enter the final 2-week stretch.
So is it these are these issues they talking about? Is this one of the reasons behind why the race appears to have narrowed? Because when we talked in the summer, there was a bigger gap between these two candidates.
It
right?
was, and it's definitely narrowed. And there are two competing historical trends in New Jersey. Yes, we're a blue-leaning state. We haven't elected a Democratic U.S. senator since the early 1970s. And that said, we haven't elected one party to the governor's office for 3 straight terms since 1961, which I note is 3 years before the Beatles ever appeared on Ed Sullivan, and a year before my beloved New York Mets even existed. So it's a while ago. So history will dictate that, a Republican wins here because you've had 8 years of Phil Murphy as the governor. But there's another trend that usually New Jersey votes for the opposite party that won the White House the year before. So Trump won last year. That would show that Democrats would take it this time. So one of those trends is not going to be the case. Someone's going to win out here. So the thought is that it's just we tend to seesaw back and forth between parties in New Jersey, and when it comes to the governor's office, and just that it's a change election. The question is, do you want change at the White House or the State House?
Interesting. So and change elections are tough because if you're perceived as the incumbent, what is it you're going to change?
Yeah, that's one of the questions that has hounded her. Yeah.
Yeah, and so let's step back a little bit because this is not the gubernatorial race is not the only one people are going to decide. They're going to look at the state house too. How does that look?
Yeah, well, the state assembly, which is our version of the House in New Jersey, the lower chamber, that is on the ballot. The state Senate is not. So it has been Democratic. Both houses of the legislature have been led by Democrats since 2000. So we're looking at 26 years, 25 years. And so that's another argument Ciattarelli has made. I mean, not just have we had 8 years of Democratic rule in the governor's office, we've also had 25 years in the legislature. So, but that is expected to stay Democratic. Republicans would have to flip more than a half dozen seats to take control. And the thought is maybe 1 or 2 changes, but we don't expect that to change too much the complexion of the assembly. And either way, even if Ciattarelli does win, he will at the very least have a split legislature. So that would make for an interesting 4 years or 2 years, because then we have another election for the legislature.
So neither of these candidates have coattails. Is that what you're saying?
No, that's a question. It's actually been a wonder is how many coattails they have. Ciattarelli did actually really well with coattails in 2021, 4 years ago when he ran. The Republicans flipped six or seven seats in the legislature in 2021, which showed, and again, he almost upset Murphy. And then they lost most of them back 2 years later. So the thought is, who really knows if whether people are tired of Democratic rule or whether it's just whatever that election's vibes are, as we said before. So that's a real big question. Also, just in today's day and age in the media environment, legislative elections don't get the kind of attention they used to get in the past, which is a shame.
It is. I am 100% on board with that. And speaking though, there's going to be some surprises. Usually there's 1 or 2. What do you think we might want to keep our eyes on election night?
That is one thing. I mean, obviously keep your eyes on whether Ciattarelli can, for the third time, can actually pull off an upset, and whether she can hold on. We were a Harris +6 state. Trump did much better last year than people expected. He only lost the state by 6 points after losing it by 15, 16, or 20 in his first 2 elections. The question is whether he can do that again or whether independents and undecideds are turned off by him. So that's one thing to look to see how well Republicans do in the governor's race and the legislature as well. We had a big surprise 4 years ago talking about the legislature. Our state Senate president, Steve Sweeney, lost re-election in a complete surprise 4 years ago to an unknown truck driver named Ed Durr. Out of nowhere. None of us had pre-written that story or anything. We weren't even paying attention to that race. So you never know with New Jersey. New Jersey is a weird political state. Very heated and very strange. And to that point, by the way, earlier, Durr lost 2 years later. He lost the seat and went back to Democrats. So it's really hard to gauge the legislative election.
So if you're handicapping this from your desk, is there, for example, in Virginia, I look at a specific county to tell me which way the statewide race is going to go.
Mhm.
Do you have something similar in New Jersey? I'm going to look at this county, this district to tell me where the trends are going and who might win.
There are a few places to look in the state, and they're all in North Jersey these days. One is Morris County, which is where Chris Christie lives, a kind of northwestern suburban county. She represents the county in Congress, but it's long been a traditionally Republican area. So if she carries Morris, that stands to show she's doing very well. But there's also Passaic and Hudson County, which are New York City suburbs right along the Hudson River. They went to Trump last time, which was unheard of, that a heavily Democratic area could go to Trump. So if Republicans can gain that, maybe they have the ground. That's what I'm saying. It's a real interesting election to watch. There's different parts of the state that could say anything. And then another area is Ocean County, which is the Jersey Shore. And they're one of the largest towns in the state is Lakewood, which has a heavily Jewish population. And they went for Murphy. They endorsed the local religious leaders endorsed Phil Murphy last time, and this time they're set to endorse Jack Ciattarelli. So maybe that gives him tens of thousands of votes. This is this is one of the more fascinating elections, not just because it's been so heated and they've been yelling at each other about a lot, but it really does feel like it's a jump ball.
And which is why we love this stuff. But how does the money look? How's the spending going?
Spending it's already on pace to be the most expensive gubernatorial election in New Jersey history. We're looking at probably more than $200 million between the candidates and outsiders. Just remarkable. Most of it has gone to her, although not a ton. Like he also has gotten a lot. Last 4 years ago, he didn't get much support from the Republican Governors Association, and that might have cost him in the last election. This time they've spent $6 million at least. Democratic Governors Association has put in more than $10 million. There's a lot of money at stake, and you see that because every time you turn on the television or flip on your computer screen, there's some sort of ad about them.
Yep. And so literally we're talking about buying a stake in an NFL team kind of money.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It's being spent on this race, which is astonishing.
Yeah.
But anyway, Brent, I know you've got a lot to do and a lot to cover, and I appreciate you giving us the ground truth, as it were, on this election. So I want to urge everybody to stay tuned. We're going to come right back with Ballotpedia's Briana Ryan to talk more about the nuts and bolts of how this election will work. But in the meantime, Brent, thanks so much for being with us on the ballot. We really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
And like I said, folks, we'll be right back after this, and stay tuned for more New Jersey politics right after this.
Hi there, this is Abby Campbell. I'm on Ballotpedia's comms team. Election day confusion? Not with Ballotpedia's voter toolkit. From registration deadlines to polling locations, we've assembled everything you need for a smooth voting experience. Our nonpartisan toolkit includes registration links, ID requirements, early voting information, and our famous sample ballot lookup tool, all customized for your location. We've even got reminders for your calendar so you never miss an election. Voting should not be complicated. Let Ballotpedia be your compass. For more information, check out ballotpedia.org's voter toolkit.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to On the Ballot. I'm Norm Leahy, your host, senior editor here at Ballotpedia. Hope you enjoyed the ad, by the way. Sometimes we do run those things, but no pressure. I'm joined today by one of my colleagues, and I'm fortunate to be joined by one of my colleagues to discuss the New Jersey elections, Briana Ryan. Briana, you've been covering the New Jersey elections, both for the Assembly and the statewide offices, all year. And so you're going to be able to help walk us through some important things like what exactly is on the ballot when people go to the polls.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me here today, Norm. So on the ballot this year, the big race is the race for governor. So we have incumbent Governor Phil Murphy is term limited, so this is an open seat. The two major party candidates running is current U.S. Rep. Mikie Sherrill and former Assemblyman Jack Ciattarelli. The governor and lieutenant governor are elected on a joint ticket. So Sherrill's running mate is Centenary University President Dale Caldwell, and Ciattarelli's is Morris County Sheriff Jim Gannon. And now, aside from that, there's also all 80 General Assembly seats are up for election this year. So the way that New Jersey does their General Assembly is it's divided into 40 legislative districts. Now, each of those districts has 2 assembly members. Currently, Democrats have a 52 to 28 majority in that chamber, so pretty big there. And then also, even though the state Senate is not up for election this year, there is a special election to fill the seat that was vacated by Nellie Poe. Now, the candidates running in that election is Benji Wimberly, who was actually appointed to that seat after Poe resigned. And he is running against Republican Frank Filippelli. Currently, Democrats have a 25 to 15 advantage in that chamber.
Okay, so that's the lay of the land. No, as far as we know, as far as you know, no ballot issues, no bond issues, anything like that.
As far as I know.
Okay, and so to step back a little bit, New Jersey, like so many other states, has had shifts in voting patterns. And what are the shifts in voting patterns that you've noticed in the Garden State?
Sure. So if we look back at New Jersey in the last 20 years, it's really been under Democratic control. Both the legislative chambers have had Democratic majorities. The governor's mansion has typically been occupied by a Democrat, with the exception of Chris Christie's 8 years in office. So we've really seen Democratic control in the state. Democratic presidential candidates have also won the state in, I'm pretty sure, every last election for the past 20 years. Now, in 2020, Joe Biden defeated Trump by 16 percentage points. The last time around, Kamala Harris defeated Trump by only 6 percentage points. So we did see a little bit of a shift there. And we're also seeing sort of Republicans trying to gain on that momentum in the state. And also, there's 8,000 more registered Democrats in the state than Republicans, but there's also 2 million independent voters in the state. So that's going to be somewhere to see where those wins shift.
Yeah, I think you mean 800,000.
Thank you.
More Democrats than Republicans. So that's it's a big. Ultimately, though, it depends on who shows up, of course. But given that we're close to Election Day, most states, I think almost every state, has some form of early voting, mail-in voting. What's going on in New Jersey with those?
Yeah, so early in-person voting in New Jersey starts on October 25th and ends on November 2nd. So this will be the second gubernatorial election where voters will have the option of early in-person voting. The first was back in 2021. And back then, 8% of voters cast their ballots during early voting. So this year, we're going to be able to see where that trend goes now that more people sort of have more knowledge about early in-person voting than they did back then. And then also, there is the option of mail-in voting. So currently about 390,000 voters have already cast their ballots using that process. And this is pretty much on par with where that was back in 2021. And it's a little bit ahead of where that was during the legislative races of 2023.
Okay. And if for our listeners and viewers, because we are on YouTube, our New Jersey voters, they've already received a mail-in ballot. Do they get them automatically or do they have to request them?
You do have to request them in New Jersey.
We'll put all of this information, by the way, in the show notes about how to cast a ballot in New Jersey. And of course, if you do have questions about how to vote, what's on your ballot, please look at Ballotpedia's sample ballot lookup tool. It will tell you everything you need to know. It is absolutely free. So please, before you go to the polls, check that out. But looking more generically about the New Jersey politics, what has surprised you in your coverage in the months that you've been covering this? What have you learned that's new and different about New Jersey?
Yeah, that's a great question, Norm. So I think what really struck me was just how diverse the partisan leanings of voters are in New Jersey. Looking at the state from someone who's from Pennsylvania, who's giving more of an outsider view of it, I always kind of looked at New Jersey like that's a blue state, but really getting into the nitty-gritty of it, you kind of get to learn more about, okay, well, here is the different areas, the North Jersey compared to South Jersey. And also, I worked on the primaries. So something else that was always fascinating to me was learning about the county line design ballots.
Right.
So
That was a big change, wasn't it?
yes. So the jury's still out on how much that's going to affect elections going forward, but that was definitely a big change. And I think that it really gave voters a lot more to think about.
Well, and of course, it's always good for voters to think a lot before they go to the polls. But as we come to the end of our show here, Briana, I just want to ask you, the most important thing about an election is counting the votes. So we know who won. Can you tell us a little bit about what we can expect, how votes are counted, when we might expect returns? Are there any surprises or wrinkles in New Jersey we should know about?
So far, knock on wood, we haven't heard anything that would delay votes, but you never know what's going to happen on election night. That's kind of the big surprise of politics, is that you never really know what's going to happen until someone gets into that voting booth.
Right. So we'll be watching closely all the returns, of course, because you're the lucky person that gets to write those results up once all the votes are finally counted. So, Briana Ryan, I really appreciate you taking time out of your schedule. I know it's your busy time of year to bring us up to speed on the mechanics of the New Jersey election on November 4th. And for everybody else, of course, you can listen to this podcast wherever you want, and you can even see us on YouTube. So, hi. But please, again, I can't emphasize enough. If you're a New Jersey voter, if you're voting anywhere in the country where there's a local election, if there's a ballot measure, use our sample ballot lookup tool to find out exactly what's on your ballot. We will never tell you how to vote, but we will tell you what is on your ballot. And also, you can turn to Ballotpedia for coverage of these elections right up until the time before the votes are cast. And of course, our analysis of the returns once it's all done. And Briana, thanks for joining us today. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Norm.
And we'll be back soon with another episode of On the Ballot. I'm your host, Norm Leahy. And until next time, I will see you in the digital pages of Ballotpedia. Take care.